Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan M.S. Pearce. This is a US elections update special. There is so much happening in the midst of the campaign season, as you would expect, in the landscape of US politics that actually I'm recording this sooner than I thought I would, because I've got so many little nuggets to share with you that I saved up that I couldn't possibly keep it any longer, because this video is going to last quite a long time, primarily because there are a number of excerpts from interviews that I want to play to you in almost full, as in the excerpts, you know, there's a good few chunks of interviews that are so fascinating that I just really want to share them with you, because I think they illuminate what is going on and who these people are so well. We're going to start, as you can imagine, with claims that took place from actually just prior to the presidential debate, and then in the debate with Donald Trump repeating the Haitian, the claims of Haitian immigrants in Ohio, in Springfield, Ohio, falsely calling them illegal immigrants and claiming they had eaten pets, etc., etc. These claims have now been debunked. However, both J.D. Vance and Donald Trump are doubling down on these claims. Now, why is this still really important? Well, because they're talking about it. Two reasons why this is important. One is, remember, I always talk about you've got two things to do: shore up your own base and try and steal people from the middle and across the aisle. You do those two things, you will get enough. You do them well enough, you'll get enough people to vote for you. If you can get over 50%, brilliant. You're looking good. Obviously, it depends where you get these votes and electoral college in different states, etc., etc. But broadly speaking, you know, shore up your base. Make sure that shoring up your own base is also about enthusing people, making sure they don't leak across to the other side, enthusing them, but making them enthusiastic enough that they'll go out and debate. It's not enough to say, yeah, in an abstract sense, if I were to vote for one of these two, I'd vote for these people. But actually, one, am I registered? And two, am I likely to vote? Am I a likely voter? Can I get off my arse and get down to the voting booth, or send off my ballot early, or whatever, you know? So that you need to shore up your own base and get that enthusiasm, and then create enough energy and enthusiasm to steal some of those voters from the other team, or to take those independents in the middle and undecided voters in the middle. So who is doing the best job of that? So that's what we need to always understand everything in the context of, right? So when we're talking about the idea of these Haitian immigrants and the accusations that are coming from one side, is that going to be attractive enough to pull over these centre voters, undecided, and people from the other side? Who is going to present here the narrative that is most attractive to the broadest number of people? Now, when we're talking about being really divisive in terms of fear-mongering about immigration, that can be really good for shoring up your own base, but is that good enough to be, is it universal enough to be attractive across the electorate? And I would argue that Trump and Vance, if they're going to keep doing that, they will excite a number of their base here, but at the exclusion of some other in their base, and they certainly aren't going to be attractive enough to get enough of those swing voters, etc., etc. So they've doubled down on these claims about Haitians eating pets, etc., etc. And these have been debunked. You know, there are videos that have been debunked. So a guy walking around with geese, a black guy walking around with geese, was actually someone that had found a roadkill of geese on the side of the road and was not in Ohio, and he wasn't Haitian. And he was just walking around with a dead geese that he picked up from being knocked over on the road. I don't know what he's going to do with it. But anyway, there's that. Then there were these stories that came from Ohio that have now, like the woman that released, we'll talk about this in a bit, but she's reneged on everything from the original claim, and still they're doubling down. So, you know, why? And we'll come to understand why in a minute. But this is from the Republican governor of Ohio, Mike DeWine.
And here's a question I never thought I would have to ask, but do you see any evidence as governor of the state that Haitian immigrants are eating pets?
No, absolutely not. That's what the mayor said. That's what the chief of police has said. I think it's unfortunate that this came up. Let me tell you what we do know, though. What we know is that the Haitians who are in Springfield are legal. They came to Springfield to work. Ohio is on the move. And
so this is the Republican Ohio governor saying these are not illegal immigrants. So that's just empirically wrong what you're stating. These are, at least by and large, legal immigrants. They're not eating pets. They're not doing what you claim. This is basically a big lie. Why are you doing this? Stop doing this. You are hurting our chances. Certainly in Ohio, yes, you're going to attract some people, but you are going to make more people unhappy with this kind of approach. So we've had all the people in the know come out and say, stop this is wrong, and yet they're still doing it. Again, is that going to be an effective approach? Now, this is a good point here. Why we need professional journalists. JD Vance keeps telling they told the Wall Street Journal about Anna Kilgore, a Springfield, Ohio woman whose cat went missing in August. So a reporter, Chris Mayer, drives to her house. She found the cat in her basement and apologized to her Haitian neighbors. So this big Trump supporter lost her cat, came up with a story that Haitian neighbours had nicked it and eaten it. That goes viral. Everyone believes these claims, and then it turns out they're completely untrue, and she has walked it back. A Vance spokesperson on Tuesday provided the Wall Street Journal with a police report in which a resident had claimed her pet might have been taken by Haitian neighbours. But when a reporter went to her house Tuesday evening, she said her cat, Miss Sassy, she went missing late August, was actually returned a few days later, found safe in her own basement. Kilgore, wearing a Trump t-shirt and hat, said she apologised to her Haitian neighbours with the help of her daughter and a mobile phone translation app. So there you go. Now, they're still kind of doubling down, and that anger and division plays into what some people think is the right outcome, the right approach. Here's Tucker Carlson.
Trump said about people eating pets. And there were two levels on which to enjoy this. Well, the first one, I literally enjoyed it. People were like, I can't believe Donald Trump accused people of eating pets. I was like, I love him. It's just hilarious. Who would ever say that? They're eating all the pets. So great. Thank you, Donald Trump. That was awesome. Because first of all, it makes all the right people mad. Like anyone getting red in the face over pet eating. That's not true. That's never happened. No one's.
Of course, they're not getting red in the face about pet eating. They're getting red in the face about people making incorrect claims about migrant communities in order to demonize them so that you can have a racist pushback against them, so you can otherize them, so you can mobilize the white electorate vote in order to vote for you. It is almost like Nazi-esque in its makeup there, and yet here he is saying, it makes these people mad, and that's cool with me. If these libtards are getting angry at these racist claims, then I'm all for it.
Ever eaten a pet? Okay, you just outed yourself. You're a liar. So that's the first thing. The second thing is now we're talking about eating pets, and so now that we are, let me just count myself as opposed. Note that if PETA doesn't endorse Trump in the next 24 hours, they're totally fraudulent. I'm serious. People have run for president in this country since the 1780s. Has any presidential candidate ever taken an unequivocal stand against pet eating? None. PETA's been waiting its entire life for this, and they still won't endorse.
And what he's doing there is obviously making light of a situation, and in that sense normalizing it to a point where it's like, it's just a pet eating thing, rather than being an affront against a migrant community. Okay, so this is another...
Without really knowing where they're from.
What happened in Springfield, I think, is an example of what Kamala Harris's open border, what she wants to do to every small town and big city in this country, which is over the last few years, 20,000 migrants, primarily from Haiti, have been dropped into Springfield, Ohio.
So I just wanted to play that because there is no such place as Haiti. These Haitian migrants are from Haiti. Just a small point there, JD Vance. You might want to get the country right that you are just attacking there. Okay, so then he kind of doubled down, and this is a pretty brutal interaction between Dana Bash of CNN and JD Vance that I'm going to play to you in its full.
why have I talked about some of the things that I've been talking about? Let me just say this. My constituents have brought approximately a dozen separate concerns to me. 10 of them are verifiable and confirmable, and a couple of them I talk about because my constituents are telling me firsthand that they're seeing these things. So I have two options.
I mean, I'd be interested to see what the verifiable and confirmable 10 are, because from the police and the governors and the people in Ohio in the Springfield area, that is not the case.
Dana, I can ignore them, which is what the American media has done for years to this community, or I can actually talk about what people...
What, there have been years of pet eating claims that have been ignored. We must be careful when we hear people responding that we think because they've responded, they have an answer. And because they have an answer, it is the answer. And because it is the answer, it is a coherent answer. But more often than not, it's word salad. And actually, when you start parsing exactly what has been said, you realise that it is absolutely incoherent or problematic or whatnot. And that's exactly what is going on with JD Vance.
People are telling me. And of course, many of the things that the media says are completely baseless have since been confirmed.
What? Give us substance there. So many claims that the media have said are baseless have now been confirmed. What are you talking about? Where's the evidence? Where's your receipts? And the problem is, if you're a kind of low information voter or someone that doesn't really care, you just like, I really like the GOP or I really like JD Vance. You listen to this and go, yeah, rather than go, you need to show me that that is indeed true. What are you talking about? This is just vagueness. And then it creates a sense that the mainstream media are not trustworthy because I've said they've made baseless claims and I've disproven them without providing you an ounce of evidence.
For example, I was told, Dana, that by the American media that it was baseless that migrants were capturing the geese from the local park pond and eating them. And yet there are 911 calls from well before this ever became a viral sensation of people complaining about that exact thing happening. So my attitude is listen to my constituents. Sometimes they're going to say things that people don't like, but they're saying things that people don't like because their town has been overwhelmed, and it's my job.
So having said, you need to provide receipts for that. So all these baseless claims that the media have said that I've disproven, here's my receipt that some people phoned 911 and reported that geese had been eaten by Haitians. So therefore, mainstream media has been disproven. Well, hang on. Have we looked into those 911 calls? Well, actually, it turns out we have. In fact, the police and the governor and so on and so forth have come out and said these are indeed baseless claims. So he is doubling down on baseless claims and then projecting out onto mainstream media that they're the ones making baseless claims. And when providing a single receipt for that receipt is indeed just something that's been scribbled on a piece of paper and is not indeed a receipt.
To try to fight for them and to protect them. Kamala Harris opened the border and now these people are suffering. That's what I'm focused on, Dana.
Senator, I have to go through several things that you just said. First of all, the Clark County Sheriff and the Ohio Department of Natural Resources reviewed 11 months of 911 calls. They only identified 2 instances of people alleging Haitians were taking geese out of parks. They found 0 evidence to substantiate those claims.
In other words, you are either lying or being really lackadaisical in the way that you are creating your receipts to justify your claims.
Also, other evidence that you have talked about, even you've retweeted alleged evidence, are unsourced social media videos from a different city, apparently no connection to Haitians. And this is from a conservative activist who offered a $5,000 reward for such things. And then going just backly to the schools and the hospitals and
In other words, here's a mic drop. I mean, boom. You've got nothing, JD Vance. You've got nothing, and yet you're doubling down on. And he's finished this interview where he gets absolutely rinsed by Dana Bash, and then goes out and gives his rally talks where he's learnt nothing from this. He's learned absolutely nothing. And I find that incredibly, it's maybe too strong to say despicable. I just find it thoroughly unbecoming of a well, maybe that is what politicians do. They lie, get called out on a lie, and then go out and repeat the lie as if nothing. They've learnt nothing, because they have learnt nothing.
So forth, being overwhelmed. Nobody is disputing that the town of Springfield, Ohio, needs help. But you're not just a bystander. You're the senator from Ohio.
Ouch.
So instead of saying things that are wrong and
these are your people. Stop whinging out there about people eating pets that's untrue, and stop whinging about these Haitian migrants, and get in there and freaking do something about it that's useful, practical, humane, and compassionate.
actually causing the hospitals, the schools, the government buildings to be evacuated because of bomb threats, because of the cats and dogs thing. Why not actually be constructive in helping to better integrate them into the community? Because there are a lot of employers there who say that the Haitian workers are helping fill jobs that they need desperately filled.
Really well put from Bash there, and there is material harm coming out of these claims from Trump and Vance to the extent that schools have been closed due to bomb threats. There have been threats to Haitians, that people are feeling unsafe. It's absolutely terrible that you've got to explain to your children in class, sorry, every school is getting closed, sorry about that. There are people wanting to plant bombs because there is quite a few Haitians in here and they hate them that much they want to blow them up because apparently they eat geese, except we all know they don't eat geese. But your governor, your senator is saying, yeah, that's the case, and he's the one giving the rhetoric that is leading to this happening. So sorry guys, you've got to go home.
Dana, first of all, let me just respond to a couple of things that you said, but I want to start with something you said, which I think is frankly disgusting. And
get ready for something that is frankly not disgusting, or there's no justification for his beliefs.
It's more
here.
appropriate for a Democratic propagandist than it is for an American journalist. There is nothing that I have said that has led to threats against these hospitals. These hospitals, the bomb threats and so forth.
I love that.
It's disgusting. The violence is disgusting. We condemn it. We condemn all violence.
Senator,
and
this
threats of
happened
violence.
after you and
But to
President
say-
Trump were...
This never would have happened had Vance and Trump not said this in public. In some of these bomb threats and threats inside Ohio have come from abroad, right? That wouldn't have been happening had these people not platformed that. And yet he's calling her as a kind of a Democrat mouthpiece disgusting.
Dana,
on the debate stage said
Dana,
that cats and dogs
you
were
asked,
being eaten.
You asked a question,
And
Dana, and
after
I'm going to
that-
go ahead and answer it.
Okay, after that, they were
what
threatened.
we have said.
So just, he is doubling down, and it is not cool. Here's another excerpt from that interview. Sorry about the visuals on this, not quite as good.
Be here to talk about policy, but if you're going to interrupt me every single time that I open my mouth, then why am I even doing this? So please ask a question, and I'd ask you to be polite enough to let me answer it.
Yes, I am, and I think that if Kamala Harris and Tim Walz were making unsubstantiated claims that had racist undertones about people eating dogs and cats, and they didn't answer the questions about that, then I would have similar interactions with them.
I just love it. Like, can you stop interrupting me, please? You didn't interrupt Walz and Harris. Well, that's because they weren't spreading racist dog whistle false claims. And if they had been, I would have been interrupting them with questions and a demand that they actually answer the questions I give them.
As you know, I am very grateful that you come on the show, as I am for other Republicans. But this is something that you're hearing from constituents. I did a lot of reporting. I talked to people in Ohio over the weekend, and they're really worried about these claims. The policies, yes, I am.
Be here to talk about.
So there you go. Just again, he's and there is material harm. You've had the Proud Boys coming in doing a walk through Springfield in Ohio. You've had the KKK in Springfield, Ohio. I mean, really? And you're not connecting your rhetoric with this happening. Like these guys would surely not have gone to Ohio to Springfield and Ohio to do this had that not been, ramped up into the public consciousness by both Trump and Vance himself. Now, I'm going to go to a long part. Will be a long excerpt from Brian Tyler Cohen talking to Mark Cuban. So if you don't know who Mark Cuban is, he's a businessman, he's an investor. He is a member of the Shark Tank in the UK. That's Dragon's Den, that was exported to the US and became Shark Tank. He is supporting Harris at the moment as an investor, as a businessman. And there are 3 excerpts on this. I'm going to play you the longest one first, which gives you a sense of what is going on here with the discussion around Haitians and the utilization of immigration as a divisive talking point.
Solve one of the most pervasive and
I'm trying. I'm not there yet, but
Sorry, that's on I've got that put on fast because that's how I listen to it. Let's put it at normal speed.
I'm trying.
Yeah. I do want to go back to politics for just a moment.
Sure.
One issue that we heard at the debate was Donald Trump airing this piece of disinformation that Haitian immigrants are eating pet dogs and cats. We don't have to talk about that. It's obvious
It's ridiculous,
that's nonsense. But the practical consequence of that is now we know that Haitian immigrants are keeping their kids home from school, that there's that their homes and property is being attacked as the result of that, and this is predictable, right? Like we've seen when Donald Trump issues his clarion call to his supporters. January 6th it happened with COVID and the Kung flu. That's what he was saying. Then there was a spike in violence,
Islamophobia, right? The whole 9 yards.
So
anti-Semitism.
Can you speak on just your reaction to that as we see someone like Donald Trump use his platform not to do any semblance of good, but rather to kind of vilify people so that he can help himself politically?
Yeah.
Okay, and this is the right approach, is to see that this is not helping, this is dividing, rather than unifying the country towards a greater sense of who we are. I'm not American, but if I was American, it's like, who are we? Let's come together as a unified country and present a positive understanding of who we are and where we're going. This is like, you guys suck, they suck, the nation sucks. It's all very negative, downplaying the US and otherizing certain people in order to shore up a certain proportion of the population, but that's not enough. You've got a hard ceiling, it seems, on what you can do with that. And I'll lead you to one of the polls I've got here, which kind of talks to this idea. Yeah, Kamala is closing in on 50%. Undecideds are choosing. Trump is operating right at his high watermark nationally of 45 to 46%. So that's what I was saying. All of my videos, I said he's got a hard ceiling of 46%, which is what you do if you mobilize that feeling and you can get as many people as you possibly can on that divisive rhetoric, but it's not unifying enough to get above that 46%. And he's just doubling down on that approach rather than saying, right, I've got that. Now let's try and be a bit more unifying to see if I can steal enough to get over 50%. And I just don't think he's going to do that. So Trump has a high floor and a low ceiling. In other words, he's got a lot of people he can get who will just go along with him. He can get a few more with a bit more of that rhetoric, but it just then it tops out. Undecideds keep breaking for Kamala and will be saying Madam President, says Spencer Hakimi in there. No, okay, let's go back to see what Mark Cuban has to say about this.
Yeah, that's the Roy Cohn school of management, right? You demonize and demonize and demonize and give credit to nobody else.
Okay, to just let you know who Roy Cohn is. So Roy Cohn was the American lawyer and prosecutor who came to prominence for his role as Senator Joseph McCarthy's chief counsel during the Army McCarthy hearings in 1954, when he assisted McCarthy's investigations of suspected communists. So this was at that time, it was all about creating fear, dividing, and hammering these so-called communists, etc., etc. But actually, in the end, it was too divisive and it failed. And that's what Mark Cuban is referring to. He says it a number of times in the interview. This is the Roy Cohn theory of management. This is what they're doing. Divide and divide, fear, fear, fear. But it will only get you so far.
And that is the antithesis of good leadership. That's the antithesis of good character. That's the antithesis of being ethical. That's who Donald Trump is. I've known him for 25 years. I'm never going to say we were best friends, but he is the most unethical, lacks character, dishonest person I've ever done business with or worked with.
What?
That is a massive accusation. He's like, I've known him for 20 years. We're not best mates, but I know him. I know him really well. When he was president, I actually went to the White House to try and get a project up and running, etc., etc. I know him. He is the most dishonest, the most character lacking person, unethical person I've ever done business with. And that's who 46% of the population want as their president. It's amazing.
Why does that matter, though? Like, people are going to look at that and say, I don't care, he's an asshole.
And they do,
but he's our
He's my asshole.
Right.
Yeah. Character is destiny, right? You don't know. The one thing about the presidency of the United States, you don't know what's coming next. The past is no predictor of the future. You have no idea what the next problem is you have to deal with on a small or large basis, like COVID for that matter, right? And you want somebody who has character, because that has empathy, that has a willingness to learn and understand. And you want somebody that is ethical when it comes to making difficult decisions. I can't even imagine why people consider Donald Trump because of his lack of character and ethics. Because when that tough time comes to make a decision, he's only going to listen to himself. And we've seen how that works out. We saw it worked on the debate, right? If he's not going to listen to anybody for a debate, right? And when he's trying to convince people to vote for him, when you have 40 or 44 cabinet members disavow him and say you shouldn't vote for him, when you have, former Republican presidents and senators and current senators come out and saying don't vote for him, that is not a man of character. They would have given him the benefit of the doubt if they believed in his ethics or his character, or that he was honest. And that tells you all you need to know. You don't want somebody like that dealing with the uncertainty. And as bad as...
And it's interesting because there are certain people who disagree with that. Say, actually, no, I do want a complete arsehole because he's going to be tough. But the problem is not an arsehole that's going to be tough, but doing that on behalf of the country. Like, I can be one of those kinds of people, a real tough, gritty person that no one likes, but I get the job done. And that job is trying to make decisions for the benefit of the whole country. You can kind of get on board with that kind of arsehole. But in terms of someone that's doing that just for their own benefit, for their own sense of identity and for their own power, then that is not the kind of person you want to. That is a dictator. That is exactly the sort of person who becomes a dictator, because it's not about the country, it's about them and what power can get them, what they can derive, what they can extract from their country by being in that position of power.
Lack of ethics, lack of character, lack of honesty is the fact that he makes no effort to learn anything. This is one of the few human beings on the planet that get dumber in front of our face every single day.
Now, this sounds like it's just a trash-talking moment of Trump, but this is someone that knows him, has done work with it, interacted with him in the business world as well as in the political world, and says, but we've known this, like we know that he doesn't read, right? In fact, when you understand the way he gives his, when you see the way he gives his rally speeches, you understand that there's a disavowing the use of reading from a teleprompter and just going off on his own little world. But when he was president, he would not read the daily intelligence briefings. He would only entertain things that had pictures and so on and so forth. Here's a guy that, I'd be interested to see what the last book he read was. He'll sit and watch Fox and Friends, and he'll rant about what he sees on Fox TV, Fox News, or what he sees on CNN. But what's he read? What's he learnt in the last 5 years since becoming president? Has he gone away and said, right, I need to go and learn about foreign policy. I need to go. I want to be president again. But actually, what is it that I need to know in order to become president? none of that. He's played a lot of golf. He said, right, I'm going to do this again. And I don't need to know anything because I'm this empty vessel that gets wheeled in. And that's actually the Heritage Foundation, all these other people that are the brains and the ideology behind this. And I'm just some vacuous kind of empty vessel that shouts about immigration, that is loving the idea of power. But I've not invested any of my time and effort into becoming a better person to be a better leader.
It's not like you can't think of one thing where it says, I think, that's really smart. Right? Or that's really nuanced, or he really understood that topic with some depth.
Yeah.
Not one time. And that's what's so...
Don't underestimate the truth here of what he's saying. Like, if you go and listen to Obama's interviews, any interview he's ever given, you will understand that man is a man of great integrity and great nuance. See his views on certain topics. Go and get his understanding, Obama's understanding of, say, the Middle East or Israel, Gaza. Listen to his interviews and understand that guy knows a lot of stuff. Then go and listen to Donald Trump in his most eloquence about Gaza, the Middle East, or any topic, and tell me that is a guy of great knowledge and great wisdom, because it's not. He is not. And I'm sorry, if you're going to be the president of the US, that's not good enough. You need to have a requisite amount of knowledge, nous. It is not just about, I'm the greatest deal maker, because even when you look at his deal making in the past, isn't there a book out about how actually, like, he's a rubbish businessman? Like, he's been bankrupted 6 different times in different areas of his empire and all those legal cases, etc., etc., etc. He's not very good at even doing what he's supposed to be is supposed to be his best domain.
Maddening and infuriating about the whole thing. And I get, I had a friend when he first ran, I said, how can you vote for this guy? And I told him stories that I've, experiences I've had with him. He goes, Mark, let me tell you something. I've been voting for politicians my entire life. You know what they've ever done for me? Nothing. I don't want a politician anymore. And there's some people that just glom onto that so strongly, they don't care about anything else.
But the flip side of that isn't he the worst manifestation of all of the things that they hate about politicians?
Yeah, of course.
He did nothing. Not only did he do nothing for the working class, for the regular class, but he got into office under the pretense of actually helping those people. There was no infrastructure plan. There was no cheaper and more comprehensive healthcare plan. Right. There was no job boom.
I literally, in 2019, I was working on a plan, a predecessor to Cost Plus, and I went and sat in the Oval Office with them, right, and tried to pitch them. I talked to a variety of people around and the HHSA, and my plan still needed a lot of work for sure, but I tried to explain it to them. It's like anything else with Donald. He's not going to try to...
For those listening, he was making the sound and the mannerism of over his head, as my dad would say, over his head like a large marquee. He wasn't able to take it in.
Get into any details. But to your point, right, he's the type of salesperson. So if you don't look at him as a politician and you just look at him purely as a salesperson, he's the type of salesperson that will say anything to get the sale. We've all had to deal with him, right?
Yeah.
And that's who he is. But he's a good salesperson, and he will connect to you at a visceral level and understand what your fears are and sell you on fixing those fears. And then he'll amplify those fears.
This is where it comes back to immigration. So it's about selling fears to the electorate and being the fixer of those fears, exactly in the way he's just going to explain with regard to fixing viruses on your computer, scaring you with all these fear-mongering stories of viruses and Trojans or whatever, and says, I can give you the best fix to that. And the problem is that actually I'm just selling you that. I'm not really very good at actually providing you with the virus scanning software, or the software isn't. I've got no idea about virus virus software and blah blah blah. You're just being sold. It's smoke and mirrors. It's snake oil salesman, etc., etc.
Oh, your computer's going, in technology, your computer's going to crash. You're going to get hacked. Hacking is the worst it's ever been by my software, right? That's who he is. It has nothing to do with whether or not the software works, but if I can get you to become afraid of Haitians, of black people, of Jews, whoever it is,
trans people, gay
people, whatever, right?
Yeah.
Anybody, then I can sell you on the fact that I'm your guy. Because when you're selling something that isn't discrete, right? It's more general, like cybersecurity, right? Or fear that your community is being taken over by these immigrants. That's the easiest sale in the world, and that's why so many people follow him. Because if I tell you you have more reason to be afraid, and then I give you reasons why you can be more afraid, and even if I don't tell the truth about how I'm going to fix it, if I lie my ass off, and you know I'm a liar, but hey, at least you're giving me a shot to fix it. Whereas Kamala is joy, she's hope. And I think, and I believe, and I hope that people are ready for the change, that they're tired of just being of everybody around them being demonized. Right?
And this is why the Waltz and Harris campaign are very much explicitly talking about joy. So they are campaigning on a theme of unity, and the Republicans, or Trump at least, the MAGA Republicans, are campaigning on a ticket of fear and vague solutions to fear, but actually not really any certainly practical solutions with granular detail. Like we will deport 10 million illegal immigrants. It's like, okay, how are you going to do that? What are the ramifications on wages and the economy, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? No, we just like vague, massive, general solutions to this problem that we have sold you as being a prevailing problem.
Right, and that the number of people who have been demonized speak to the people around them and get out and vote and say, look, it's time to change.
I think so long as they can keep certain people afraid of other people, keep them distracted so that nobody's paying attention to what's happening at the top. Can you speak on this idea that if you're appealing to rural white people who are lower class or working class, this idea that the group that they need to be afraid of most, or the group that's taking from them, is immigrants, and so kind of creating class warfare or demographic warfare.
Sure.
Can you speak on that? Because,
yeah, of course.
Because that's a strategy that they rely on so.
And they do it well, right? And they do it well, unfortunately. It's like the boogeyman, right? The boogeyman exists, right? It's like, why are scary movies so successful, right? Because if your life doesn't really connect you or give you experience with things that are different, it's easy to be afraid of.
But is there one pie, and if somebody else is taking from that pie,
no, of course not. That's not the way it works.
It's detrimental to you.
No, of course not. It's not a zero-sum game.
Right. That's what I'm getting.
Right.
At.
It's not a zero-sum.
That's just reminded me, actually, I've got to find a meme about this kind of this exchange you're talking about. This is it. I'm sure this is absolutely apt. So this is a pretty famous meme that I think is so good, right? Where you've got Rupert Murdoch, who's a guy, this is to do with sort of Brexit, immigration, etc., etc. And the Murdoch newspapers were selling fear to people who were very fertile ground for those seeds to be thrown. He was saying, or his newspapers saying, all about the immigrants, careful about the immigrants. Well, you're going to have 80 million Turks coming in with open borders, even though Turkey wasn't in the EU, and there never would be, and there never probably will be at this rate. But yet my dad was like, I'm going to vote leave because I'm not having 80 million Turks come here. And you're like, 2024, where those Turks are not even in the EU. So, but he's like, this meme says, careful mate, that foreigner wants your cookie. And you got this working class, in this case working class white guy with a cookie, a single cookie there. Rupert Murdoch's got a plate full of 20-30 cookies, and he's scaring this guy, saying he's going to take your cookie, when the guy that's going to take your cookie is Rupert Murdoch, with a bit of distraction there and fear-mongering about this guy who's got no cookies coming in. Rather than Rupert Murdoch give him a cookie, he's going to come and take your cookie. And it's this zero-sum game that every gain for them, for that migrant, is a loss for you. And that's what Mark Cuban's talking about here.
Game, and that's to Kamala's that's what Kamala is trying to explain, right? It's an opportunity economy where if we can grow the economy so that everybody benefits,
Positive
there's nothing
someday.
that can happen. There's nothing that a Haitian can do or anybody.
All our plates can get full of cookies. It's not like there's only one cookie here and one of us is going to get it and there's two of us, and if it's not me, then it's you. So I need that cookie.
Can do for that matter, that's going to stop an entrepreneur from being an entrepreneur. Right? You can't stop me. I don't care who the fuck you are, right? If there's a good business, you come on Shark Tank and it's a great idea and a great opportunity and there's product market fit, doesn't matter. Nothing else matters. We are going to kick ass, right? Not all of them are going to succeed, but the idea that that person is going to take away from you is insane, right? But I understand why it resonates with people because look, I've been broke. I've been sleeping on the floor. I've been, 5 guys in a 3-bedroom apartment. And when you're in that circumstance, it sucks, right? And if somebody tells you it's not your fault that it sucks, it's these or them or those, it's better than admitting, to yourself that, okay, I've got it hard and that's just my life.
Yeah.
Right? When the upside, there's the American dream, and I don't know the right rhyming word for, American Horror Story, right? But if people believe their own, if there's a book I read in high school called Why Men Rebel. And I stole a copy from the library and ended up buying it, right? And what it says was when individual people's expectations for their own lives are high and they underperform those expectations, they fill the gap in somehow, right? And if you can't fill the gap in with achievement, then it's got to be someone else's fault. And if someone else is telling you, you're right.
And this is kind of cognitive dissonance reduction, which is I think I'm perfect, I think I'm amazing, as we all do. We can't ever be wrong. And you have that core belief, and then you have the expectation I'm going to fulfill that belief, and then you have not quite fulfilling that belief. So I've got two options. Either I'm not good enough, I haven't worked hard enough, I haven't tried hard enough, it's my fault that I haven't achieved my potential, or it's someone else's fault, it's society's fault, it's those foreigners' fault. And if someone's coming along and saying the reason why you're not a millionaire is because of those foreigners, then I'm going to go, yeah, right, that's the difference. That explains that gap between why I'm here and not here where I should be. Right, that explains it. It's those foreigners.
That lack of achievement that you haven't, it's not just that's just the way life is. It's not, okay, we'll try to help you, right? It's not, we'll give you the resources. So, hey, we'll pay for childcare. We'll give you childcare credit so you can go out and work. So you don't have to work a second job, right? Or you can spend more time with your kids. And that creates a virtuous cycle for education, right? No, if it's like, no, it's not your fault.
And what better messenger for it's not your fault than the guy who has refused to take accountability for anything in his entire life.
Ever. He's the victim always, right? Yeah. Which is also infuriating, right?
I mean, I always find that so fascinating that this is a party, that the Republican Party is predicated so aggressively on this idea that these are alphas, these are the tough men, Donald Trump views himself as a strong man, and yet he is wallowing in perpetual victimhood.
Always, right? And again, it's just Donald Trump. Donald Trump captured the Republican Party. The Republican Party does no longer exist other than a fundraising vehicle, right? And this is who he is. He is always the victim. It's the Roy Cohn, School of Management, right? It's never your fault. It's the Communist Party. That is the most insane thing, right? So I had this conversation with a friend. He is reinvigorating the McCarthy playbook from 1954 or 55.
All the while attacking communism as if he's protecting everybody from it.
Yes, are you or have you ever been a member of the Communist Party? No, in social media, it's not even a question anymore, and it's not even a blacklist. It's a hate list. You are Kamala Harris, Communist Harris, right? All the name calling, all the hate. He doesn't even ask the question. He just says, so if I say something negative about him, I'm a communist, I'm a Marxist, all this other ridiculous nonsense that just makes me laugh. But that's what he does. It's the Roy Cohn playbook. And, it imploded on Roy Cohn. He didn't win the McCarthy trials. He got, do you have no shame? We are about to have our do you have no shame moment, led by Kamala Harris. And people will recognize that, yes, as a country, we do have shame. We are self-aware. We do care. We are empathetic. And those go hand in hand with leadership. You can be strong, you can be bold, you can be decisive, you can fight, right? You can demand the best, right? And you can stand up against our greatest enemies alone or together. He can't.
I would have a lot of...
Okay, so I thought that was well worth playing, a good deal of, because I think there's an awful lot to get our teeth into there. And then when you see some of the reactions outside of this, so this is the New York Post, which is a big, it's a tabloid, American tabloid. It's not New York Times, it's New York Post. It's a tabloid pro-Trump newspaper. Just remember, when this election is over, that the New York Post published a story about a minor accident with no injuries involving licensed drivers hundreds and hundreds of miles from New York, just to stir up animosity against the scapegoat group. I can't tell you how much of a sign of the times and that this is, and how much you can lay the responsibility for this at the feet of J.D. Vance and Donald Trump. So the New York Post decides, nothing to do in New York, to report Haitian motorist, not an American motorist who's of Haitian descent or etc., Haitian motorist making illegal turn in Springfield, Ohio, smashes into mum driving with autistic daughter. And there you go. That would they ever have written that article, done that tweet or whatever, had JD Vance and Donald Trump not been spouting the stuff they had? I mean, that is an incredible, I think, reflection there. And then this has done an awful lot of the rounds at the moment. So JD Vance said he's been creating, if I have to create stories so that the American media actually pays attention, then that's what I'm going to do. So lots of people are having a go at him for saying that he's admitted to creating the stories. Then he kind of refined himself to say that actually I'm not making them up. I'm just creating this news like topic, if you like. But it's like he's not really helping himself, because he's not able to substantiate any of the claims he's saying. So it does really look like he is actually creating this furore out of nothing. Now, I want to remind you about Laura Loomer. I talked about her in my previous video, saying that she's now, you start putting this all together. So demonization of immigration, and then you understand Stephen Miller. I did that interview with Stephen Miller that was horrific. So he's one of Trump's top lackeys, and Laura Loomer has been going around in the plane with him and appears to have his ear. Lots of people calling that out. He's then defended her, said, "Oh, I don't know everything she said," and blah blah blah. But she likes me. What he seems to focus on all the time is how much she likes him. Like, I don't really care what she said. She likes me, and that's enough for me. That's his defense of having Laura Loomer around. Well, remember that video I showed you that was deleted by Tim Pool. Tim Pool is a YouTuber that's very much supportive of the MAGA world, very anti-Ukraine, pro-Russia. This is what was said at the end of this video.
Should Democrats be in jail? No question. When Donald Trump gets elected, should he...
By the way, when you're talking, so we're going to move on to talk about the idea that you got the assassination attempt on Trump, and it's all because of Trump has now accused the Democrats of spreading the rhetoric that is dangerous and led to the assassination attempt.
You start locking them up, no question. Should there be lists of Democrats that need to go to jail? 100%. And the reason for that is they've committed crimes. We need to make sure that when Donald Trump wins, we've got an attorney general, a deputy attorney general, a head of the CIA and the FBI. Kash Patel would be fantastic. We can have attorney general. There's some names floating around. And then they can start having their investigators and the feds issuing subpoenas, pulling up evidence, and with real evidence, bring them to judges for warrants. Then these people can spend three years of their lives fighting tooth and nail for the crime against the government for crimes they committed, and we can prove. Yeah. And the reason why we put them on trial is that we can show the whole world we will uncover what you've done. We will make sure everyone knows, and you will be held accountable for it.
Not just jail, they should get the death penalty. We actually used to have.
So this is Laura Loomer advocating for the death penalty for liberals and Democrats and for treason. and you then have Donald Trump saying, actually, it's the Democrats with their horrible rhetoric that have led to this assassination attempt on me. You're like, I'm not sure we've heard this.
Just jail. They should get the death penalty. You know, we actually used to have the punishment for treason in this country.
And then that was deleted, so on and so forth. Laura Loomer, if you remember, said this the other day. If Kamala Harris wins, the White House will smell like curry, and White House speeches will be facilitated via a call center. So these are like denigrations of her Indian heritage, saying that the White House is going to smell of curry and everything's going to be operating through an Indian call center. And the American people will only be able to convey their feedback through a customer satisfaction survey at the end of the call that nobody will understand. And that's what Marjorie Taylor Greene called out as really hateful rhetoric, even from her standards. So there is this idea amongst some Republicans, even Marjorie Taylor Greene, who's super MAGA, that actually there is a really disreputable racist edge to some of their rhetoric and some of the people who are hanging around with Donald Trump and therefore JD Vance quite a lot, and Laura Loomer is one of them. An interesting MSNBC contributor here, I think, gets to the nub of it.
I mean, nothing. Arlington National Cemetery.
Oh, I need to turn her onto normal speed.
The memory of this sweet little boy. I mean, here's the reality, Nicole. This is the logical end of the Republican Party. This is where they've been going.
That's what Mark
Katie
Cuban
Britt,
just
when
said.
She gave her State of the Union response, used a story that was completely misleading to denigrate immigrants. When J.D. Vance ran for the United States Senate in the first place, his main ad he ran started with the line, "Are you a racist?" He then proceeds to denigrate immigrants. Donald Trump came upon the scene, at least when I was, as a teenager, moved back to New York. The first time I paid attention to him was when he was calling for the execution of 4 Black and 1 Latino teenage boys who were 14 and 15 years old, lying about them and accusing them of gang rape and making the term wilding so common that it was scary to be a Black teenager, which I was at that time in New York, because you were targeted. You know, as somebody who is the daughter of immigrants, you know, I know what it is like to be that person that eats different food from all your friends, whose household is different, whose mom has a heavy accent and whose father has a heavy accent, and fitting into an American community as an immigrant family is a challenge, right? But the embrace of the country, of the place where I grew up in Montbello, in Denver, Colorado, and being able to still be an American, even with the mom with the accent, like that's what the country is, right? But Donald Trump doesn't believe that that's what the country is. J.D. Vance doesn't believe that. He believes that that he can activate the id of every white American to say, look at that person with a foreign accent. Look at that person with dark skin. Look at them and think of them as a cannibal. Think of them as a monster. Think of them as an animal, a beast, not a human like you. And then I am going to make a bloody change in that dynamic, but I'm going to rip them out of your community and save you from them. J.D. Vance said the other day, you know, what's more important, angering 20 or 30,000 who he called illegal immigrants, or saving my people, my constituents? Well, who is the my? He doesn't believe that Americans are like Aiden's dad. He's making a calculation that white Americans are so easily triggered by made-up stories that come from neo-Nazis that they will run to him to protect them.
And this is, I'm not trying to have some big debate about immigration. I'm trying to understand this in terms of who is more likely to win the election. So just go back to the strategizing here and say, okay, right, you're playing on, and there are issues on the southern border. They need to be sorted out. But it seems that Trump's GOP is attempting to take that theme and expand on that into immigration as a whole, and therefore alienate migrant communities or maybe people of color. As she said, if Vance has talked about my people, he's talking about white people there, and the otherization of these others is what they think is the winning formula for the presidential campaign, and I don't know that it is. I think that has a hard ceiling. So just from, take out the morality of it, but just from a practical strategy point of view, who is more likely to win over those undecideds, to win over those different demographics and people from the other side a little bit? And that will include a lot of people who are from migrant backgrounds, like this contributor.
I think what he's going to find out is that the majority of Americans are like Aiden's dad. They just want to live in a country where they can...
She's referencing Aiden's dad. So Aiden's dad is this guy whose son was killed by I think an illegal immigrant, and Trump and his team used him and this kid Aiden as an example of why you should come down heavy on immigration, etc., etc. And Aiden's dad came out and said, please don't use my son's name like this. Like, it was hard enough losing him, but you are now politicizing him, and we don't agree with what you've done. This, my kid was killed, and it was terribly sad, but it's not an immigration thing. This is a human thing type thing. And that's who she's referencing, just to give you the context.
Have their child's memory be undefiled and have their community respected for the melting pot that it is. This is a melting pot community that is thriving because of the immigrants' participation. And you know what? Donald Trump can go to hell with his decision to disrespect, quite honestly, every white voter in this country by saying that you are a dog-barking racist like he is, and that you can't discern fantasy from fiction. I don't believe that's true. Kamala Harris doesn't believe that's true. Tim Walz doesn't believe that's true. But James David and Donald Trump believe it's true. We'll find out in about 50 days.
And it's really interesting because, yeah, I think that's broadly correct. Although, people are going to be saying, yeah, but what about these issues on the border? And yet that is a separate thing, which is why. So what the Kamala Harris campaign had done, which is quite clever, is to recognize that actually that is a weakness of the Democratic platform. And so they need to make sure that they are seemingly strong enough on immigration and strong enough on the border, which is where they go back to the bipartisan border bill from Senator Langford and others that would have been the strongest bipartisan legislation on the border ever, I think. And that was vetoed by Trump himself, effectively, or his proxies. And I think for Kamala Harris to say, we would enact that bill straight away if I'm voted in, is really, really strong. It's about as strong as they can be on the border without going too far over to the GOP. And that hopefully gives them a difference between, they are saying, okay, we will try and sort the border out, yet these communities of migrants here, they should not be vilified. And these are two separate things. Now, the other contributor comes in here. We just play what she has to say as well.
Stories about their town. I mean, this is something that hurts everyone it touches. And I wonder, in your view, how can people help these communities in your state?
Well, we have to acknowledge the facts. The reality is the mayor of Springfield, the governor of Ohio, the city manager have all debunked this claim, right? And so one of my dearest friends in Congress, Sheila Shifless McCormick, is Haitian. This is hurtful to her. This is hurtful to her community. This is something that was so troubling that I decided to call it out this week in our agriculture committee because it is deliberately divisive, untrue, and racist rhetoric. And it tells you a lot about J.D. Vance and his character, or lack thereof. He represents Ohio, and it shows he's willing to denigrate his own community to serve the interests of the maniac of Mar-a-Lago. He puts him above everything. And to your point, it's not every country that they're concerned about. This is the man who called Haitian countries and African countries shithole countries, S-hole countries. This is the man who called out NFL players, majority black, sons of bees. This is the man who instituted an anti-Muslim travel ban when he first got into office. This is the person who started the birther movement of our first African-American president, Barack Obama, questioning his citizenship, his native roots of being born in America. So this is a person who has shown us time and time again, the person who referred to Mexicans as rapists and thugs. So it's very clear to me who he's targeting, because he's been married to two of his wives are immigrants. And so we don't hear very much about those type of immigrants when it comes to his disdain for immigrants. His rants are very specific to people of color. And so for me, it is troubling when he is willing to put so many people at risk. To your point, bomb threats have been made at schools in the middle of a council meeting. People are having to evacuate. These are things that are creating chaos and confusion. And I'll just say this last point. We know who the author of confusion is. And if you know, you know.
So and I think that's fair enough and interesting. So to then go back to JD Vance, and we've just heard Laura Loomer's comment about Curry in the White House. This is what JD Vance had to say about that.
So yeah, do I agree with what Laura Loomer said about Kamala Harris? No, I don't. I also don't think that this is actually an issue of national import. Is Laura Loomer running for president? No. Kamala Harris is running for president, and whether you're eating curry at your dinner table or fried chicken, things have gotten more expensive thanks to her policies.
I mean, that blows my mind, right? So you've got, okay, curry represents Indian people, and fried chicken represents black people in America, and often in pejorative ways, right? And you've got JD Vance saying, I disagree with what Laura Loomer said, but I'm effectively going to reiterate it in what I say. It is, I mean, I don't know who's advising JD Vance, but again, that'll play really well to a bunch of people in his core demographic, in his electorate there. But is that a unifying kind of statement? If you're a black American or you're an Indian American, do you listen to this and go, yeah, this is who I'm going to vote for? That's what you got to think of the whole time. Is like every single thing you say, is that going to play well with the people I need to attract to my tent?
Of national import. Is Laura Loomer running for president? No. Kamala Harris is running for president, and whether you're eating curry at your dinner table or fried chicken, things have gotten more expensive thanks to her policies.
Just absolutely incredible that he would say that. It blows my mind. But there you go. Right, I am going to probably leave it there, because I think actually if we spend this whole video just talking about that whole Haiti, I almost said the wrong country myself, said the whole, if we deal with just the Haiti stuff, then I think that could be useful in itself. I'm just wondering whether actually then we want to maybe talk a little bit about unity. We will have one last excerpt from this Brian Tyler Cohen, Mark Cuban interview that then talks about unity in a context also of economics and running a business. And if you are going to have this campaign theme of fear mongering and immigrants bad and you should be afraid and we're going to give you the answer to that, how does that translate into the business world? If you are a multinational corporation that has your headquarters in the US, if you're a huge corporate entity that has as your workforce the entire myriad of human myriad demographics in your workforce, then how are you going to react to a a candidate or a nominee that is advocating for division and otherization? How does that look in your workforce?
Prices, while they weren't high, no one was put in a better position to succeed.
When you look at the business community, I think there is kind of this overarching belief that Donald Trump is better for business, if for nothing else than the reason that he just says it a lot.
No,
right?
that's it, right? Yeah.
But if you look at small business applications, for example, right now, they're the highest that they've ever been under the Biden applications under the Biden administration. Can you talk about the dichotomy between what Donald Trump is seeking to do and the purportedly pro-business ideas that he says he's putting forward, with the fact that right now, using this democratic model is when we have the highest small business applications in modern American history?
So business can mean a lot of different things, right? It's a solo entrepreneur who comes on Shark Tank with is the only person in the entire company, had a dream, and this is their American dream. Or it could be, Apple and NVIDIA and the biggest, highest market caps in the world, right? Donald Trump certainly has made an effort to support those larger companies through lower corporate rates, through other types of opportunities that he's created for them. But he's done nothing for the small business person, right? You hear Kamala Harris talking about efficiency when it comes to starting a business. You hear Kamala Harris talking about raising the deduction from $5,000, which is a meaningless number these days in starting a business, to $50,000, right? You hear her talking about child tax credits with, if you're starting a business and you can pay for child care for your children or child, that allows you the freedom to go start a business, right? So she's talked over and over again about the...
And by the way, this is, although it's going to start talking about unity in a second, just from a policy point of view, and I've said this time and time again, there's only one party or one candidate that appears to be interested in talking about meaningful, practical substance and granular detail. Okay, it's not the most granular detail, but when you put these side by side, what policy details has Trump espoused at all that are going to, for example, going to help small businesses, that is going to kickstart the economy or even more, take it to the next level? Because the economy is doing very well, but who is talking to detailed projects and policies to benefit the American economy?
Economic opportunities that she's trying to create for small to medium-sized business. And she's just used the term entrepreneurs and founders over and over again. You haven't heard that from Donald Trump at all, whether he was in office or since then. That's just not in his DNA. I asked a question on Twitter, had he ever invested in a startup or a company that didn't involve any of his relatives? And nobody could give me an answer, right? I didn't know the...
Again, go back to the idea that Donald Trump only ever does things that are good for him. Whereas people on Shark Tank, they are doing things that are good for them because you're making investment and you get a return on investment. But there's also an element, if you are an ethical... is it Deborah Meaden in the UK version of this? She's quite an ethical person, and she is often looking to, how do I make the world a better place? Or, what kind of ethical position will my investment take, etc., etc. So Mark Cuban here is not just thinking in terms of how am I going to make myself an absolute ton of money, or with Trump it's like, if I'm going to invest in a startup, it's going to be just my kid's startup, or I'm not bothered because I'm all about me, not about making other people popular. Because when you're investing in a startup, you want other people to succeed, but Trump sees everything as a zero-sum game. So it's like, well, if these guys succeed, it is at the expense of me. So I'm not going to invest in something that is effectively at the expense of me, because we're all competing in the business world, even though we might be in completely different sectors. So it just doesn't fit into his understanding of how the world works.
The answer, and I didn't know what to expect, because there could have been 20 companies he helped somebody, friends of his son, friends of whoever. Nobody came up with a single company. And to me, that says volumes about who he is, because to me, it's rewarding when I go out and invest in startups, right? If I'm helping somebody else chase the American dream or reach the American dream, that's why I do Shark Tank, right? To help all these companies. It's a beautiful thing, right? That's what makes this country different than so many others. He doesn't think that way. And so he's not thinking in terms of smaller companies, startups, the Etsy companies, the eBay resellers, right? He could care less. And to me, that's a great failing. Well, Kamala on the flip side said, okay, we had 5 million or whatever business applications, we're going to 25 million, right? that's what drives the economy. 68% of jobs are from smaller companies.
Is it not just tax cuts for the top one half of 1%?
Because you always have to ask, what changes behavior? And changing corporate taxes from 21, changing from 35 to 21, okay, you can expect some behavior change. Changing from 21 to 15, but also putting constraints that it's only if you are not importing any products, that's ridiculous shit, right? Going from 21 to 28, that's not going to really change anybody's behavior.
Yeah. How cataclysmic is it that we have business leaders, Fortune 500 business CEOs, for example, none of whom have come out in favor of Donald Trump?
I know, it's insane.
For a Republican nominee for president, this is the purportedly pro-business party, for him to have no avowed support from any of these CEOs.
So again, it's a hugely important data point there. If you're talking about massive corporate entities having none of their CEOs openly supporting Donald Trump, you've got to understand why that is. So this is where we get on to talking about unity. And I think it's a really interesting point from Mark Cuban here.
I'll say this, and it's a little bit off path from what you're getting to. Parties really don't matter right now in this election, right? I think we saw Donald Trump just take over the Republican Party, right? Mitt Romney was the candidate before him. He's nothing like Mitt Romney. He just took it over and made it his. We're seeing the same thing with Kamala. Right? This is not about Democratic ideas. This is about Kamala Harris's values and relating to the American people. The opportunity economy. That's what makes this so amazing. And I think that's why so many big business people have gravitated to support the VP, because they understand that Kamala, her values are what are going to make her different. Her values are what makes her stand apart from the Republican Party and the Democratic Party, for that matter. She wants to bring people together, and that's so different from...
So going back to, your job is to shore up your own base and to attract people from the middle and attract people from the other side. He is saying that in the economic domain, she is also showing that kind of sense of big umbrella party, or big tent for everyone to be a part of. She wants that unifying approach to doing economics as much as it is to doing anything else.
From what Donald Trump wants, and that's what companies need in order to be successful. When there's partisanship and division, it's hard to run a business. I gave a speech this morning, right, where I had a conversation, and one of the things they said is, don't talk about the election. Because we have Republicans that work here, I should say Trump supporters and Harris supporters. And she understands that, and the CEOs understand that in order to be optimally successful, you need an united country. Just not only from a sales perspective, but just the culture of your organization. You don't want to have to worry about saying the wrong thing because we are so partisan. You want to be able to manage your business as a unified organization, and that's becoming more and more difficult.
Absolutely fascinating there, and we'll end it there, which is this idea of unity as opposed to division. And I think this is what this whole video really is about. Now I come to think of it, is just, of course it is just, you've got one party that seeks to divide the country and another party that seeks to unite it, and those are the two themes. Which one is more likely to win more of the vote than the other? Which narrative is more likely to win the election? Which one gives you a more positive sense of who you are now and where you are going? Which is more joyful? That's kind of what the Harris campaign are seeking to say, that we're going to unite towards a vision, and we're going to unite joyfully towards a vision of a better future. And Trump's republicanism is a sense of like, where it's all terrible, and it's all the immigrants' fault, and they've taken all your cookies, and we're going to get those cookies back, but really it's going to be a tax cut for the rich, and I'm going to keep all the cookies, thank you very much, and my mates over here. I know that's obviously me being very biased and partisan, but unless he presents any kind of sense that it's otherwise, then that's all I've got to go on, which is what he's proclaimed: tax cuts, even further tax cuts, the ones that are already they're already in place, that are due to run out. He's going to keep that going and then add further tax cuts, which is not a sense of like, I'm looking after the small businessman, I'm going to do something to stimulate the economy from the bottom up. This is kind of trickle down economic approach that looks rather too similar to the classic old Murdoch kind of trickle down, like, oh, I'll eat these cookies and some of the crumbs might fall onto the table and you can lick up the crumbs, thank you very much. That's how I'm going to stimulate the economy. You can eat the crumbs from my salivating mouth. And this is why that kind of economics was called trickle-down economics, originally called horse and sparrow economics, because it was like the horse would eat the oats and it would poo out the oats and the sparrows would peck at the poo afterwards. Now, the horse represents the capitalists at the top, if you like, and the sparrows would represent the working class. And it's the idea that you feed the big horse, the big, your big oligarchs or whatever, you feed them, they will crap out stimulation for the economy, and that will somehow, feed into the economy, and the economy will be a much better place. And it's exactly this, rather than the other approach would be to give the cookies directly to the people in the lower echelons of society, maybe in the form of child tax credits, maybe in the form of welfare in some way, maybe in the form of startup businesses or whatever. If you give the money to there, actually it's a trickle up economy, and what we know is that working class people will spend more money than rich people. You give someone like Rupert Murdoch a tax break, like, what's he going to do with that extra money? He say it'll be offshored somewhere. Like, that is not stimulating the economy. You give that same amount of money, so to take like $1 million, right? You give Rupert Murdoch $1 million. What will that generate? It would just like disappear and go abroad somewhere. If you gave $1 million to a bunch of working class people, what would they do? Well, most of them would just spank it. You think that's bad? You think it's bad that the welfare goes out to working class people? Actually, that just gets spanked in a local community, and that money becomes money multiplier, and it multiplies in that local community. And it's a much better way of stimulating the economy than giving a tax break to a billionaire. The idea is, they'll if you don't give a tax break to them, they'll move to another country and start their no, they won't. It doesn't happen. Like, that's what they try and scare you with. And actually, you look at the Kansas brownback tax disaster, the experiment that happened there, and it didn't happen. They reduced taxes for everyone. The welfare state crumbled. Schools didn't get any money. They didn't attract anyone in from these states around there that had higher tax thresholds, and they ended up losing all their money from their treasury because they lowered taxes. So, I know it's more complicated than that, but essentially, which of these two, and I'm not saying that the Kamala Harris ticket is all about that, but I'm just presenting, different extremes here. But there is a sense of economic unity as well as cultural unity that I think the Democrats are gunning for, because they want to attract people over to them in a way that the Republicans at the moment aren't. And if they don't change, I think you're going to have this issue where you've got that hard ceiling of 46%. And that, unfortunately, for the Republicans, will not win them the election. So we can talk about immigration in terms of the moral dimension here, but actually I'm trying to talk about it in terms of what is more beneficial to win an election, where you need to attract as many people to vote for you as possible. Anyway, hopefully that made sense. Take care, guys, and speak to you soon.